Welcome, everybody, to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I am the host. Over there is Janelle Fosquet. She
Hello.
is the co captain, my colonel, my guidance in this journey. How are you, Janelle?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fired up. We got a great episode today. Today we get the opportunity to talk to Battalion Chief Dena Ali, and I think she is one of the up and coming voices of the fire service, not only for female side but also on leadership. We had a great conversation with her. She's very humble and talks about you know leading with humility and also a drive to be better every shift, which is what we're about here. But what a great episode we have coming up today. What were your takeaways, real quick, just to tease a little bit?
Well, she has done a lot of research and studies into behavioral health for firefighters, firefighter suicide. So she is a wealth of knowledge in this area. And it was just great speaking with her because she has some really good tips and just guidance and reminders, especially for firefighters who are doubting themselves, finding them in
Yeah,
these moments where they're not so sure about their abilities. And that's okay, she has talked about how it's okay to not be okay from the standpoint of depression and mental health issues, but it's also okay to admit when you don't know something.
right,
um
right, and to
and
rely on those around you,
yeah,
right, and
yeah,
be very humble about that. And
yeah.
so,
And she
well,
wrote
let's
a
get in.
great article about this as well. And I'll put it in the show notes, but it's called Be a Not Knower,
Okay.
The Power of Leading with Humility, which just perfectly complements everything we were talking about on today's
Yeah.
show.
Yep. Again, great leader. Really worth a good read in her article and listen. And also, I pull out a great kung fu movie kind of movie esque, not quote, but time frame there where we have some technical difficulties. So those that are watching on video, my lips do not match my voice at sometimes. So like the old kung fu theater. So if you're watching for that, that's just a little technical glitch. If you're listening, no problems. Listen away. Really happy to have you here. And let me just tell everybody kind of a little bit about you and let me know if I miss anything. But you are a battalion chief for the Raleigh Fire Department in North Carolina. And before that, you worked on the other side as a police officer. You got your master's degree from the University of North Carolina, Pembroke. Where you focused your research on firefighter suicide. You're an adjunct instructor for the NFA. You're founder and director of the North Carolina Peer Support Team. You're an avid fitness enthusiast and biker. And then apparently, I just saw this. Congratulations, you were named the 2022 Remarkable Woman winner for North Central, or for North Carolina, the Central North Carolina representative for that. Is that correct?
It is, yeah, that's pretty cool.
What what did I miss there? Anything?
That was pretty impressive. I might have to, like, go back and write that down so I could use it in the future. That was awesome. You did a better job with my bio than I've ever done. Thank you.
We'll
I'd like to
send that to you.
clarify biker. Are we talking biker or cyclist?
Cyclist.
Cyclist.
Ooh, got it,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
A key
That's
distinction.
it's a key distinction. It changes which helmet you put on. That's for darn sure. Correct? Yeah.
Correct. If I was
And
a biker, I probably would not be alive right now because I am very impatient.
It's a well. See. Here's the deal. You're a mountain biker or a cyclist. Correct? Isn't there's the difference there, right?
Yeah, and I do both of those, but not a motorcyclist.
Okay.
So,
Non-motorcyclist, and you're newly congratulations, you're battalion chief in Raleigh, and you and I have a lot of I've heard a lot of people say, hey, you need to talk to Dena. You and just talk about some health and wellness and some fitness, which we will today. And it was really funny because Janelle and I were doing the better every shift, and we had to do a practice um, podcast, just her and I, and we focused on some positive things. And one of the articles and news stories we came out was a story of you helping out one of someone who lost their home on New Year's Eve, And we kind of did a synopsis of all that, and we actually in that episode said, Chief, give us a call. We'd love to have you on and hear a little bit about it. And here you are. Uh, let's start with that. Like, so what happened on that, and how did that whole thing come about?
So yeah, New Year's Eve we had a structure fire. It was later changed to just a shed fire. So we just assumed it was like, oh man, that let down. Oh, it's just a small shed, no big deal. So it was pretty impressive. There was a lot of fire. We put it out, and then we realized that somebody actually had turned that into their house. It wasn't like a shed of supplies. I mean, there was a bed, cooking stuff. It was somebody's house, and after the fire was put out and we're cleaning up and we're getting information, we find out the lady's 76 years old. She's disabled. She still works 2 jobs,
Oh my gosh.
and she lives in a shed because during the pandemic, she lost her like housing because she works 2 jobs, but neither are full time. So, and while we were there, she asked 2 things. She was like, "Can you find my key? I need to drive my van because I still have to work." And then there was a couple other things she asked. Can you find this? Can you find that? But I mean, she lost everything. I mean, such a small space. There was a lot of fuel, so it was a lot of fire. So I couldn't find any of the stuff that she asked me to find, and we as firefighters, we're so excited to run fires and make grabs and be heroes. But at situations like that, we leave and we feel really crappy because we didn't go help anybody. Like
Yeah.
we put the fire out, but we didn't do anything positive for her. And a lot of people after it, they were like, "Oh, that was so awesome what you did for her. You're such a good person." But really, that's not the truth. Like, I did it more for myself than for her because the next day I went to try to sleep and I couldn't sleep because I couldn't stop thinking about her circumstances, the fact that she lost everything, she can't drive to work. And I couldn't turn my mind off of it. So I just did a very simple Facebook post. And I was like, hey, I would love to just collect a little bit of money to give her a gift card so she can buy some clothes. And it was amazing the amount of people that were just grabbed by a simple, like, 3-sentence Facebook post. And within 24 hours, I had $4,000 donated.
Oh,
One of my friends had a connection with the Heister Automotive in our area, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll make her a new key for free, no big deal." And then nonprofit, the Victor Company in our area, they were like, they found out that the reason she lived in that shed, it was outside of her sister's house, was because all the bedrooms are upstairs, and she couldn't go up and
couldn't take the
downstairs
stairs.
of her needs. And then I also later learned she's a private person and she likes her quiet. But the Victor Company had a chairlift donated so that she could
Oh,
go up the stairs and stay in the bedroom in her sister's house. So it was really cool. It was more about the community that saw the post and all jumped in, and literally, like, everybody's like, "Man, you did such a great thing." And like, yeah, no, for me, like, I was
Right.
able to sleep that night and it made me feel really good. Her and I have stayed connected. For my birthday, she sent me flowers. She's such a sweetheart. So that was really cool.
well, you say it's for you, but really, it started that way, but it turned into such a selfless action, which is so great. And it's you're channeling something into something positive for somebody, which is helping kind of release that burden too, which I think is a big reason why, firefighters deal with so many, mental health issues too, is because they're like just holding on to all those emotions. So kudos to you for, taking that feeling and turning it into an action. That's awesome.
Yeah, because I think, to touch on that, and kind of this leads to the next question. I mean, that's not the first time you felt that. It's not the first, right? It's just it just turned into an action. But I think all of us have, there's those calls that you think about. How did this wind up? What's the next thing? And that weighs on us mentally, right? And I think, is that one of the motivating factors for you to start the different organizations that you started up there in North Carolina? You have a cycling club up there now, and you started a peer support team through the state. I mean, are those? So was that called a motivating factor, or was this? Were you doing that well before this?
I was doing that well before this, but again, it's everything that I've ever done. I'm not like, and this is honest. It started with my selfish needs, like what I needed. So because I hate to try to come out here and seem like I'm this like giving, loving, that is always thinking about others.
Yeah.
Because it a lot of the stuff that I do started with my selfish needs. I'm a part of a cycling group called the Carolina Brotherhood. It's a really awesome organization. They were founded in 2012 by a couple of Charlotte firefighters after Captain Jeff Bowen from the Asheville Fire Department was killed in an arson fire, and they just wanted to honor him. The year before was the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, where firefighters rode from New York or from Florida to New York. And so these guys in Charlotte were like, hey, we should do something more locally to honor our fallen. So they created a ride from Wilmington to Asheville. And me being a cyclist and being just really into the service, it was like a no brainer. Like, I want to be involved in that. And so I got involved with that organization in 2012. And then in 2015, I just went through a really shitty year and ended up pretty depressed and struggled with thoughts of suicide. And my struggle, I guess it was like a really shitty year. Am I allowed to say
Yeah.
that on here? By the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Uh, but I had like on one end, I had something really bad happen, but then on the other end, the timing of life and the timing of our circumstances. So I also was newly promoted to driver, but assigned to a pretty slow, boring station. And that first promotion to driver also was a relief acting role in the officer's seat. So back to writing reports, which I hadn't had to write anything in a while, and I had no idea how to. I couldn't remember where semicolons and stuff like that went. So I was like, hey, maybe
Yeah.
I should go back to school. So I literally just signed up for graduate school to just see if I could do it. And then also, I thought it'd be a good idea to just force me to do some writing. However, so that fall in school, I had an assignment, and it was action research. Find an area where current practices are not best practices, research and help develop better practices. So just the timing, ironic. I'm feeling really depressed. It's when I'm like at my lowest in life, and I have this assignment, and I'm still like super just into the job. Like from day one, I just was one of those people that I was drawn to this profession because of like this brotherhood and this always like kind of like the podcast, you know, every
Hmm.
day you get better. And I had that passion every day to always get better. And so I reached out to our safety chief, and I just asked him, hey, this is my assignment. What's a subject that I could research for the Raleigh Fire Department that could be of benefit? And this is 2015, like not too terribly long ago, but in terms of firefighter mental health, it's kind of a long time ago because we really weren't talking about it. So he asked me if I would research firefighter suicide. And of course, my first thought is like, holy crap, what does he know?
Right.
Because it
What?
seems so random.
Yep.
And so, like every good student, I go to Google and firefighter suicide, and the articles that popped up. I guess for me at the time, again, just another bit of fortune. Three of the first articles that popped up are ones that I still reference today because they were that good. And one was a dissertation by Dr. Janet Sabia. She did her dissertation in my state, North Carolina, on firefighter suicide. And it was just such a well written article. But what grabbed, she connected to the feelings I was having. So in that, I wasn't struggling because of a bad call or a serious trauma or anything like that. I was just struggling because of disconnection I felt. I worked with some people who, I didn't feel like I belonged with, and it was a tough time. But I was super humiliated because I'm like, man, I cannot believe that I'm feeling this way because this person doesn't want me in here.
Hmm.
I thought it was so. I thought it was such a silly reason. So I was just really just not sharing it with anybody, like just bottling it up within me.
And
But
you're
as
also promoted, right? You're just promoted. So you're
yeah,
sitting in a new seat, trying to figure that out, and having these kind of second guesses almost, right? Like it's and the reason I point that out is I can relate to that a little bit as I've gone through my career. But right, you're stepping up into a more of a leadership role, yet you're second guessing yourself, right? And that's part of this process, right? That you're experiencing.
100%. So like I'm stepping up in this new leadership role. And up until that point, like things have been going really well in my career with relationships, with people, with just this bright future. And I had this first promotion, and it's like, so much excitement. Like, wow, things are going really well. I get to take the next role. I can lead a little. But it was one of my firefighters who, had been on the job 10 years longer than me. So it wasn't an older guy who just refused to even acknowledge my existence from day one. And so instantaneously, like that excitement of the promotion was just kind of ripped away because
Mm-hmm.
I realized how much control like other people had at the time, right? The control they had, like if he doesn't want me to lead him, I can't lead him. And yeah, so I mean that was really tough, but it was really hard to talk about because I had friends from the academy, I had friends other places, my family, people are excited. They're like, "Hey, congratulations, you're promoted. We're so proud of you." But there was no way I could say, "No, don't be proud of me." Like the
Yeah,
guys talk to me.
yeah. It's
They
not
don't.
going as well as you thought,
Yeah,
right?
no, like,
Right?
yeah, and at the time, I just looked at myself and was like, "I don't deserve this, like, I am unworthy." I didn't have the ability to step out and see that maybe this person was insecure, and he chose, to treat me the way he did to make himself feel better. I didn't have that, emotional intelligence at the time to see that, but back to Dr. Savio's research, I was so grateful I stumbled upon it because in it, she talked about things like that. She explained
Mhm.
that for first responders, we think that our problems are so insignificant compared to the problems of everybody else. And when we struggle with things like relationships or addictions, or disappointments, we become extremely humiliated by them because they're insignificant compared to the problems of the world. And for that reason, we silence them. And she
Mhm.
explained how that silence is what can really build into turmoil. And so as I read it, I was like, holy crap, this is exactly what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And there was no better feeling at the time than to realize that I'm not a crazy person or that I'm not, just completely off my knocker. So it was so powerful. And then, of course, just learning how common mental health struggles were for first responders, suicide, all that other stuff, it gave me a purpose and a passion.
Mhm.
So that little assignment just turned into some sort of purpose. Like, I felt better doing it, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Man, I want to help learn to help other people feel better."
Because other some other people got to be going through this, right? Like, um, and you also thought like, okay, this isn't just me, and what I'm actually feeling was validated, right? You've kind of, I'm sure you were reading that research, going, wait a minute, is she researching me? Like this is a late night television. What are they trying to get me to buy here, right? But you're reading this, going, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. I can relate to that. Did you find that there wasn't the other side of that? A, people weren't talking about it. B, what do you do for that? Right? Like, what was your next step then after that?
And that was exactly it. So, when I realized that I'm not the only person dealing with this, that other people are struggling, that's when my next step was, okay, where are the solutions? What are the solutions? So then I just dove deeper into the research, found the work of Dr. Thomas Joyner from Florida State University. All these other leading researchers. Chief Dena Ali from Chicago Fire Department had done a lot of work, and I just dove into their research, and that's where every bit of research came back to the need for peer support. And just looking at Dr. Joyner's scientific model of suicide, you know, and some of the other models, and seeing that a commonality was disconnection and how connection is life sustaining. So then, of course, peer support can be that bit of connection. So it led into research. It led into this passion, this desire to like create a peer support network to get the word out about peer support. And then that just snowballed into recognizing, I just presented last week. And one of the things I said, and sometimes when I say it, people initially are like, what? Because it was a peer support summit. And I said, I wish we could get rid of peer support teams because we should all be peers that support each other. You
Yeah.
don't need somebody who's attended a special training. You need to be surrounded by people that get it and are willing to look out for each other. And that starts with our leaders. Like, what's far better than a peer support team is a good company officer who will care about their crew. I tell people all the time, I would rather have a company officer who takes good care of their crew, who makes it okay not to be okay, who advocates for resources, than have to send somebody to a peer that they may not know, may not have a relationship with. It's that person they have the relationship with that is far more meaningful. So then the direction, peer support, yes, great, we need it. But now, how do we make better leaders and develop leaders who care more? And Aaron, I don't know if you have experienced this, but every promotional test I've taken where there's like subordinate counseling, you're trained and taught that if you refer to EAP, you can get that point. And that's,
It's
you should
ex-
refer to EAP.
it's exactly what it is. We rehearse that. You rehearse, okay, you go through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you got to mention EAP. You have to, do you feel safe? Do you need me to get you out of this situation? That's a valid question, obviously. But then it doesn't ask anything personally. It goes into this robotic script of having to check the
Exactly.
box and then refer you to EAP and let me know. And then you say, I'm here for you and I can listen and everything else. But after that, I think, like it's a robotic response to this situation, which is probably what you encountered as well and still see in a lot of departments, right?
And then you have a lot of company officers who have this idea in their head that my job is to refer to the right resource. I am not the right resource. And what we need more than somebody who can refer is somebody who can connect. Yes, resources are important. Me and Janelle were talking before we started about, how awesome therapy is and how beneficial it could be for all people. So it's so important for, our company officers to be able to share that and say, here's what I know about therapy and here's how you connect. But before that step, they've got to be the ones that show that care. And they've got to be the ones that model the behavior that they want their people to see. If you're a company officer and you are Mr. Perfect, higher than thou, never struggled, never needed a resource, how is your, firefighter going to trust and believe that it's okay not to be okay? They're going to
Yeah.
feel alienated and isolated. But what bothers me more is when I hear leaders say, oh, that's not in my realm. I have to refer out,
Yeah.
and they have no idea the line that they're creating between them and their people. And we know, like, these careers are long. A lot of us start bright-eyed in our 20s, and over the course of our careers, we lose our parents, we lose loved ones, we experience tragedy, we experience illness. So much happens in the course of our career, and every single one of us is going to be faced with some sort of grief, and every single one of us is going to struggle. And what better way than to have somebody else who struggled just help you see the path through
Yeah.
and help you know that your struggle is not completely unique, that you're not the first one, and you can get through it.
I think you mentioned something there about, therapy and I'm at, and I hope members of my department would say, hey, yeah, I've heard him talk about, but I mentioned I've gone to therapy. I think every firefighter as part of their apprenticeship or academy should actually go and do a therapy session just to understand it's not probably what your perception of it is, number one, and number two, that way it opens the door for it. It's not, hey, it is for everyone, and I recommend it whether you feel you're doing great or you're not. Like, we need these checks and balances. So I always that's the first thing I tell people, like, wow, I had therapy and it was great for me and I still do it. I still, even if things are going well, like, and you mentioned that, like, we all experience these same things. And that's really what this podcast really is all about. Like, this started as, you might be, the battalion chief in North Carolina, but right now, hopefully there's a firefighter in, Southern California that's saying, you know what, I can relate to that. I can relate to me feeling like I should have the answers, and that I'm stepping into a promotional thing and I'm more scared because I really don't know what's going on, now. And it's okay to do that. And it's okay to go see therapy, which I think you wrote an article on that too, correct?
Yeah, Carolina Fire Rescue Journal just published it in the summer. The article was titled "Therapy is Awesome," and I actually got that idea. I was teaching a peer support class, and at the beginning of the class, people just go around and introduce themselves and talk about why they're here. And one of the people in class, she stood up and she was like, "Hey, my name is Alexis, and therapy is awesome, and I want to help other people go to therapy." And I love the way she did it. It was just so like everybody in the class just kind of laughed. It was really cool. And so from that point, it was like, man, how do I help convey that message to other people that therapy is awesome?
Yep.
Yeah,
I
and
read
it's
the article this morning, I was like, I was nodding. I was like, yeah,
That's
actually,
cool.
it's awesome. Hence the title. But there are so many other there's these stigmas with it, right? Like, oh, why do you need that? But once you experience it and you understand how it can help you, it's about sometimes providing you with tools. Sometimes it's a means where there are things that you're probably feeling that you don't even understand. And and I think Janelle, you were commenting earlier on the article that she wrote. She wrote an article for FR1, right? For the kind of on that.
she was interviewed. Yeah, she was
Right,
interviewed by
right.
one of our editors for a great article.
And that one is what it's okay to not be okay, right? Isn't that what it was?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
so.
Yep.
I was
Um,
talking now that was the easiest article I ever wrote because I didn't have to write a single thing.
there were some great quotes in there. Actually, I read it this morning again, and you know, I've been saying that for years. It's okay to not be okay because we're all a little bit messed up, and I'm a firm believer in that. Like, well, I look in the mirror every morning, so I know that's true. But um, you don't know what someone else is going through, right? Like, and did you see that now? You're in a Chiefs role. Do you have to step back every once in a while? Do you find yourself doing that more in the Chiefs role? Like, look, first of all, you can't take things as personal, number one. And number two, maybe looking at it, turning around saying, does this person need something? I mean, or how do you go about, when you do have some conflicts or you see that from, like you experience that with your, one of your senior members, being kind of put off about things. Like, how has that changed in your new role?
Well, I think I guess I'm fortunate that I just have this knowledge that I have that responsibility to know the people I work with, to have relationships. That way I could just tell when somebody has changed. And then of course, again, the fact that I'm aware of all the resources out there in a really great position to be able to share those resources. So and that's I guess part of like the messaging that I'm trying to share with company officers, with chief officers, is know your people, develop relationships with your people. I think for some of us, and I remember when I was new, some of the things that they say is leave your baggage at the door. When you walk in, you're here for everybody else. And we realize you can't leave your baggage at the door. It's not possible. But also, for us to be at our best to serve people, we have to be at our best. And that sometimes takes the people around recognizing when maybe we're a little off and checking to see what we need or just to show support. It's just so powerful to recognize that, when you suffer in silence, that's extremely destructive. It causes you to do things that are not healthy. However, when you can be a little more open about what you're going through or just have space, it's not about making everybody sit down and talk, but sometimes it's about being able to come in and say, hey, you know, I'm going through a lot right now. If I seem a little off, I just need a little, uh, and just having that awareness so that we know, hey, this person, if I see that, their behavior's changed or they're slowing down, I can maybe pick up the them out. But it's just really about having relationships and telling when they're off, having the courage to just ask them, hey, you seem different. Normally you come in at 7:15, you make the coffee, you're hanging out and you're active. I've noticed you've been coming in later, you're not socializing. Do you need anything? Is everything okay? Just something as simple as that can be so powerful for somebody because I think all of us know that when it's not instinctual for us to say, hey, I'm struggling, help. because none of us like asking for help.
No. No.
But when somebody sees that we're struggling and they come to us and they say, "Hey, I've noticed this. Do you need anything?" Sometimes that's what we're desperate for, is just to be able to share when it's so hard to say, "I need help."
Mhm.
I'd love to, I was thinking about the younger generation coming into the fire service, and there seems to I don't want to like rely too much here on generational stereotypes or tropes or anything, but one of the things that it seems, um, just with younger people in general, is that they're much better at prioritizing work life balance and asking for help. And I'm curious if you're seeing that in the fire service, for one, and also if maybe even older generation firefighters, you know, are responding to that, learning from that, like, oh, these kids, like, they're okay being like, you know what, time out. I need a break. Like, this is hard for me, whether it's, just taking a day off or going to a therapist, whatever it might be, but just establishing those boundaries or talking about the tough calls.
Yeah, no, I've seen that, and I think it's awesome. And I don't know if it's because, you see, like we talked about, documentaries on Netflix, and there's been so many. HBO had the one with the Olympic athletes, and Michael Phelps kind of talked about his struggles. Simone Biles
Mhm.
has really been open about her struggles. So we're seeing things that, when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, you never saw anybody that we admire and respect be open about struggle. Everybody just showed all the good in their life. So we just assumed that they'd never struggled. And so now you're just seeing how common struggle is. And, I love that, Netflix, HBO, you know, NBC, they're all sharing stories of healing, so that people know it's okay not to be okay and you can get through it. And I think that's why, I kind of smiled when you said that, because there's this new kid at the firehouse I work at. He's on an opposite shift, but he's so impressive. He gets to work like almost 2 hours early every day. Gets off the truck, has this incredibly positive attitude, never sits down. Like, it's just like that perfect new person. But then they pick on him because they say, like, on his days off, they're like, "Man, he's so lazy. He goes home and takes a nap and goes for a run. He'll clean his house so his wife doesn't think he's a complete piece of crap." But I'm like rooting for him, because I remember when I was new, I would never tell anybody if I was going home to take a nap, because I didn't want anybody to think I was lazy. But it's so cool to see an awesome new person that does an amazing job prioritize their health. And like, he's like, "I'm tired. I'm gonna take a nap and then I'll go run my 8 miles."
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm seeing a lot more of like the young generation knowing how to set boundaries and knowing it's okay to set boundaries. I think most of us would love to set boundaries, but our culture never made us feel that it was okay to have
No.
boundaries.
No, and
Yeah.
you're seeing like, and Janelle and I talk, and and I've had just been in these rooms, and Janelle has really orchestrated a lot of these interviews where we've been talking to a lot of fire service leaders, and they all go back to leadership and communication, and the basics of things that back in the day, when you talk to a lot of people, are like, well, I was told don't talk to my officer. They'll tell me what I need to do, and if you don't know your role, I'm going to tell you where it is. And it was the more of a militaristic, yes sir, no sir, I'm going to go do this. Now that's the way it was. It's still there in certain areas and certain aspects. We are getting better. And you mentioned from a leadership standpoint, get to know your people, get off, so you don't sit behind a desk all day. Is that what you're saying as a chief? I mean, there's times, but right, I think old school, we saw that. And so it's really refreshing, because you're right. The younger generation, um, they do focus on a little bit more on their health and fitness, which we didn't even dive too much into the fitness side of things. But you mentioned sleep, and I know that you're really looking into and have done some incredible kind of education and looking into resources on sleep, because it's so important for us in so many other aspects, right? And there was I did watch an interview where you talked about sleep and its relationship to mental health, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. And so I think you mentioned at one point something about sleep and how if you don't get enough sleep, depression, PTSD, like there was some statistics and data that you shared. I don't know if you remember those offhand, but it was pretty kind of like, oh my gosh, really?
Oh yeah, no. As I dove into research on sleep, and I would just I was researching suicide, and everything that I read, there was always like a sentence or two in there about sleep and the importance of sleep. But then what I thought was really fascinating was, we talk about interventions, and when you get scientific, when you find a correlation, you cannot have an intervention. When you find a non-causal link, you're getting close. When you causal link, then the intervention can take place. And what I found was they started quoting a causal link between disrupted sleep and many mental health disorders, PTSD, depression. But then it's not just the mental health; it's physical health. For example, one night of insufficient sleep can render 70% of your cancer fighting cells ineffective.
Oh,
But
That's
you can,
terrifying.
yeah, it's completely terrifying. But then I started to just read more about our cycles and stages of sleep. And, we need 5 cycles, 5 90-minute cycles a night for optimal health. But what's fascinating when you dive deeper into the cycles and understand them, the last 2 cycles are dominated by REM sleep. In
mm-hmm.
fact, like, the last cycle is almost predominantly REM sleep. And in REM sleep is what some of the scientists, like Dr. Vanderkolk, calls inbuilt therapy. You have REM sleep, that's when you have your dreams. And in that dream sleep, it's where you can take events and memories, especially traumatic memories, and it helps to resolve them. And so with that REM sleep, that's why it's the inbuilt therapy. And it's really fascinating to learn that the sleep helps to like rid yourself of memories you don't need and then store memories you do need. So yeah, the more I dove into sleep, I was like, wow, this is so important. But early in my career, I kind of learned to like to live off of like sub 5 hours. And I thought that the less I slept, the more productive I could be.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like this feeling of guilt whenever I wanted to like sleep more, or if I wanted to sleep in, or if I wanted to go to bed early. I was like, no, this is terrible. I have to read this. I have to go out and do this. I should work a side job. But now I prioritize sleep big time. Like I want 8 hours a night just because I recognize everything that happens when you sleep. Like sleep is a very active process. So much good happens when you sleep that if you're not allowing yourself to sleep, basically like you're taking years off of your life.
Yeah, you're just continually breaking your body down. You can't recharge and regenerate then, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Like I didn't, I had no idea things like toxins are like released. There's plaques that can build without sleep that lead to like dementia and Alzheimer's. There's just so much active work that happens in our sleep that is just absolutely fascinating.
Well, and it's interesting because you were talking about the new guy at the station going home to take a nap, or whether it's someone who's going to therapy or whatever it might be, and people who think, oh, this is insignificant. I shouldn't need to do this. It seems selfish, but in reality, it's the opposite of selfish. There's got to be a new word because it's selfish in a way because it's for us and it's doing the right thing, but ultimately has the selfless value of being a better worker, a better teammate, better communicator, all these things, and setting up those boundaries that help people be better and live a healthier life. And so, what's the new word? What's the new word for selfish that's not selfish? Like, because it's really so positive.
Self-care. But so something that you just made me think of. Of course, going down all the rabbit holes on it, I started reading about the amygdala, how the amygdala works, and the amygdala is where fight or flight is. It is like where our emotion lies. Uh, when you sleep, less than 6 hours, your amygdala can be amplified, and they found like significant amplification of the amygdala on one night of poor sleep. And when your amygdala is amplified, your ability to cushions are absolutely limited. That's why a
Mm.
poor night of sleep can make you have a temper, can make you, drive like an idiot, can make you just, go off on somebody. And Dr. Matthew Walker shared some research, and it was really fascinating to see in the spring when we spring forward. They found that Monday after spring forward, if you have court, you're have a harsh sentence from the judge, because of the
Whoa,
association with like a lost hour of sleep
that
uh,
one
on
hour.
that. Yeah, but other things they found, more heart attacks happen that Monday, more
Yeah,
suicides. So many other things are associated with just 1 hour loss of sleep, which is unbelievable.
yeah.
Oh my God, we could do a podcast just on that. And and actually the sleep, the fitness, the health, the wellness, we didn't talk too much about that just until this last part. But I think if can we have you back to talk more about that?
Oh yeah, no, that absolutely that'd be cool.
Because we do something called we do hot seat questions, and poor Janelle, we've had these great conversations, and I keep telling everybody, can we have you back? And like Janelle is like, I'm the one who's going to schedule all this, but the cool part, and the stuff that we've dug into, and thank you for sharing so much, because I think it really there's so many other members of the fire service that are probably listening to this, nodding their heads, going, "Okay, yep, yep, I've had those feelings." And now we see that with our children with sleep, right? A 2-year old or a 3 or 4, where they didn't get enough sleep, they have their tantrums. Well, it's the same for us, whether you're 2 or 42, right? Like it affects us. And um and and I think the main point is that we need to recognize this, and take some steps to take care of ourselves, because the better we take care of ourselves, the better we can take care of each other and those we serve. And uh, and again, that's a whole nother. That's maybe the theme for our next podcast with Dina, don't you think, Janelle?
Oh yeah, for sure.
No, that's literally the last spoke Monday and at that Peer Support Summit, and the first thing I said was the best way to be a helpful peer is to model the behavior, which means you have to take care of yourself. You need to see a therapist so you know what that's like, so that you could better explain it, and somebody will be more willing to trust you. You have to model self care, boundaries. You have to model, you know, just making it okay. And it was really cool. Chief John Butler from Fairfax County Fire. That's where the conference was. It was hosted by his department. He spoke for a few minutes, and that's exactly what he did. He talked about how important this was to him. He talked about like his newly promoted officers are right now sitting in an officer development class where they have 3 subjects about mental health, and how proud he is of that. But then he got vulnerable and shared the story of a friend of his who died by suicide, and a comment that somebody he loved made, basically calling it selfish. And he said that that really bothered him, because he too in his life had had struggles, and he knows all too well that it's not selfish, that it comes from pain. But it was just so this really incredible leader that people admire and respect share some vulnerability. And
Mhm.
so that, I mean, that's what it's all about. Is in order to better care for other people, we have to learn to take care of ourselves and just model the behaviors we want people to see
And set that
or
example.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I appreciate you sharing your story as well. And we will include in our show notes the links to your articles, the interview with you, so people can hear more about your story as well. And some of the research too. We'll definitely share some of those articles.
All right, let's throw you in the hot seat though. So these hot seat questions, we have a little fun. We don't know where the questions come from. Some are coming from our listeners. Some are coming from people
My
that I
brain.
talk to, and some of them come from Janelle's big brain cells. Um, but if for those listening, if you have a great question for some of our guests, better every shift at firerescue1.com. You can send an email to us. Janelle, you want to start it off today?
Oh yeah, I think we've got some really good ones today. So you were telling us that you were going to take a long drive. When you are in the car for a long time and you're driving, what songs or what kind of music do you like to listen to?
Long drives have to listen to books or podcasts.
Oh, nice.
I listened to Chief Lieb while I drove to Fairfax County. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I hate long drives. I just absolutely hate it. So I try to find something productive uh, to maybe ease the burden. And actually, Chief Lieb's like episode flew by, and so that was really awesome. I just downloaded Abby Wambach's new book Ford, and I listened to that on the way back. It was pretty good.
Very cool.
She stole my question. And by the way, just to confirm and to repeat that Dena Ali listens to the Better Every Shift podcast. So that's our third person. My mom is one, Janelle is the second, and now you're the third. I'm kidding, by the
Yeah,
way,
we've
but
got 3 listeners.
three
Y'all started
listeners.
off really strong. Like episode one came out really strong. I'm actually pretty excited about this podcast.
Well, we
That's awesome.
appreciate the
Thank you.
support. Yeah, and so my question was going to be, what are you currently reading or using for motivation? And you answered
I
it.
don't know if anybody else does this, but I no longer can just read one thing. I'm constantly reading multiple books. So, and I reread stuff, which is terrible. So, like on the way, I listen to Chief Lead's podcast, but I also re-listen to Deep Survival. It's a really good audio book, and I re-listen to Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. But yeah, I just downloaded Abby Wambach's Four. I'm reading a book on mindfulness right now, just trying to learn that. I just finished a book about psychological safety, fearless organizations. Uh, so I'm kind of bouncing with I'm too many things. Uh,
That's
but
impressive. I can't read more than one thing at once. I got a unitask with my books, but I totally connect with you in that I like to reread things or rewatch or re-listen and just kind of like let it sink in a little bit more.
yeah,
I
now,
I I, I need that.
yeah, there are some books that when I read, they grab me so much that I can't do other things. But what
Mhm.
I found is if I'm reading something, trying to dig, and it's not grabbing me, that's when I'll have to
Mhm.
read as well.
Nice.
I'm an infographics kind of guy, so I just look at pictures, but I do read. I find myself rereading a lot and listening. So I wrote those down. So I'm actually creating a little list here.
That's
All
awesome.
right. Well, I'm curious too. We talked just briefly about you being a cyclist and mountain biking. Do you have a favorite trail or somewhere you like to ride, like a national park or somewhere around where you live?
There's several trails in the Raleigh area, and people make fun of us because there's no mountains here, but it's called mountain biking. However, a 4-hour drive west is Asheville, Brevard area, and there are just some absolutely incredible remarks. So, if asking a favorite, it's definitely going out to like Brevard and hitting the mountain bike trails in those areas. Locally, there's a few. There's one close to my house called Williamson Preserve. It's a 15-mile trail, and it's just a quick drive, and they're fun and flowy. And actually, I'm really sad because when I started today, trail status was open, but it's raining, and they just closed it. So yeah.
Now, are you a bike snob? I don't know. There's probably a better term than that, but do you have like a favorite brand for your mountain bikes?
I'm a bike snob. For years, all of my bicycles always cost more than my cars. That was always but yeah, I ride a Santa Cruz Juliana mountain bike.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're Trek up here. We're Trek. We're Trek. It's a Wisconsin company, so I got to do a Trek.
Oh,
But
yeah, yeah. No, actually,
I like.
Trek might be my next bike. I have a couple of friends that work at our local Trek shop, and they have a pretty impressive discount. So
Actually, I think a guy on our department. I think his wife works for them. So we'll talk. We'll talk a little bit. I got one more question. Okay, I probably have two more questions. But we talked about exercise. What's your favorite exercise?
Well, if we're gonna ask, like that's my favorite. And I'm one of those people that I just do a lot of different things because I get sick. So I like to swim. I've downloaded. I use this new training program. It's called Chalk Performance Training. I love it. This former CrossFit athlete, Ryan Fisher, developed it. You pay $100 a year, and every day I can pick from 5 different programs. I'm supposed to stick to one. So he has a strength and conditioning program, full body aesthetics. He's got one called Big Bootie Blueprint, and you're supposed to stick to one and do exactly what he says. But I don't. I jump around. And so at work in the morning, I'll do the full body aesthetics. It's just lifting. So you don't work up too much of a sweat. So I can come in early in the morning, do that. And then in the afternoon, I'll do the strength and conditioning. But I cherry pick my workouts, which apparently you're not supposed to do. However, it keeps me motivated.
Yeah, whatever works, right? The
Right?
big booty one though, you had to look at least.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was doing that, but I like the other than that one. So it's tough. It's really good programming, and it's very challenging. So
Nice.
You got one more, Janelle?
Okay, this is another fun one. Do you have a movie that is like universally considered terrible that you love, that you are not ashamed to admit that you love?
um,
We've all got one of these, right?
I have tons.
I don't think this one's universally terrible, but people are really surprised when I tell them how much I love The Notebook. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I really enjoy watching The Notebook.
A
I
sweet
cry every
story,
time.
a sweet love story.
Yeah, and have you guys, any of you guys watched What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, of course.
I don't know if like this job has affected me, but I cannot watch it. I used to love it and it would make me cry and I didn't mind, but it's too emotionally challenging for me to watch now.
Yeah,
But I kind of want to watch it to see if I can do it.
it's a
I've
challenge. Can you get through it without crying?
Yep. I've
Yeah, it was
experienced that
like the yeah.
That's how I am
with
with Field of Dreams. Like getting to the end of Field of Dreams, like if I, it's not possible for me to not cry, but I try really hard. Maybe
It's fun.
someday.
Sometimes I
I,
enjoy crying.
Can be cathartic. Need a
Yeah.
good
yeah.
cry.
You got to let it out.
Yeah.
You know, it's good for you. That's we could do another podcast on that, like movies and times where you've reacted emotionally, where you're like, where is this coming from, right? Like, not to get back deep into stuff, but man, oh man, like I've like the movie Cars, I've all of a sudden like tearing up. I'm like, it's a cartoon, but I think there's a lot more to that, right? Like,
Mm.
and it kind of summarizes everything we've talked about today. Where and when some emotions can come out, how to do better self-care, how to really start to understand the importance of sleep and relationships and having conversations like this. Is there anything you want to add, like, with the idea of being better every single shift, being better every single second in this case? We've numerous comments about you got to take care of yourself so you can better take care of them. Is there anything else you want to add that we didn't touch on yet, at least in this episode? Because we're going to do another one. We already said that.
That's awesome. I think the greatest thing that I've learned as of recent, especially like as a leader, is not knower. And it's okay to be a not knower. Be curious and be willing to admit what you don't know, what you used to know and you've forgotten. So that's kind of that's something that I wish more people were okay with. I think we could be, because what I see at work a lot is people, I could tell that they're insecure about certain things and they choose to try to hide it, because they don't want anybody to know that they don't know something. And so they can't fix it or improve upon it or model to the people around them that it's okay to review and improve or to not know and ask questions. So yeah, I think the best bit of advice that I would love to just pass on is to be a not knower.
I
That's
like
an
that.
awesome, yeah, that's an awesome quote. We'll use that for the maybe for one of the titles here. So thanks so much for your time, Janelle. Did you have anything else to add?
No, I appreciate that. I love that line. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not know things. And one of the running themes of this show seems to be park the pride at the door. It's okay to not know everything and be at 100% all the time.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. Thanks for supporting our mission here of being better and living that. And we hope to have you back again if you'll have us. With that, for those that are listening, I hope, is there a way that they can reach out to you, Chief? What's the best way to contact you if they have questions or?
I'm on all the social medias, the LinkedIn, the Facebook, the Instagram, the Twitter, with my name, or like Twitter and Instagram are DMA1090. I'll put that in the private chat. But yeah, I mean, you can find me on the social media.
Okay.
And again, boundary, something I've learned is not to reply to things right away. So if I don't reply right away, I'll reply. Boundaries.
Well, yeah. Thank you for that, and for us. If you have comments, questions, concerns about the show, please reach out to us. There's a lot of contact links within this, but most importantly, make sure that you work hard and take the words from Chief Dena Ali and put them to heart and work to be better every shift. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you again sometime soon.